it seems to me like a lot of people aren't reacting so much against the person of Jesus and all he was, and is, but more so the church and narcissism in the church. Would you agree? Well, welcome to Truth in the Trenches. I'm Jeff.
I'm Steven.
Steven, we'll jump right in.
Let's go.
There's a case in the news, man, that everybody's talking about. Been talking about it for, I forgot, what, 46 or 48 days since it happened?
Good.
The Nancy Guthrie case?
It's 47.
Is it 47?
No, dude. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Well, dude, obviously they haven't found her yet, unfortunately, and that's a tragedy in itself. But for some reason, the sheriff of the case has, I think, gotten the most publicity, maybe because it's been a slow news month. And a lot of like reporters and journalists are writing about the character of this sheriff in Arizona and the way that he's handled the case. And there's been a lot of observations that he's very cocksure and arrogant. And, you know, like the New York Times wrote about him like going to the gym and being really emotionally unaffected by this whole case. And he doesn't particularly, I guess, like being questioned on his decisions to like send the DNA profile to Florida here to get it, you know, researched and not giving it to the FBI. There's been like a whole bunch of like, you know, stalemates going on in this case. But words like narcissist are being thrown around regarding the sheriff. And I guess just seizing on that word and that idea, narcissist and narcissism. It seems like a lot of people in our culture throw that word around really easily. Do you think that's because people see things in culture that are true, or do you think they're responding to things and just kind of upset and angry and just labeling things narcissism or that person's a narcissist? What do you think, bro?
If I'm understanding the question, I think more the latter. I think there's a sense of narcissism and narcissistic behavior in culture for probably many reasons, from academics to pop culture. There's a sense that people have of narcissistic behaviors. I think that's a question I have, is at what point is somebody behaving in a way that is simply narcissistic? At what point does it become narcissistic behavior or something that you did that could be described as narcissistic, but is yet not revelatory of the fact that you have an actual disorder? I wonder about that.
Well, I can shed some light on that, at least from
Bring it.
since we came packing today to
That's
the
right.
podcast. We printed out the DSM-5's definition of what a person with narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by. There's 9 behaviors. You got to have 5 of these bad boys to be considered a narcissist, like classically a narcissist. So here they are. 1, grandiose sense of self-importance.
Uh-oh.
It's like somebody that exaggerates achievements, talents, and expects superiority, right? That's number 1. Second of all, fantasies of success and power. Being preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, beauty, brilliance, or ideal love. Third, belief in being special. So not just your grandma says you're special, but you literally believe
Right.
like you are God's gift in some area.
Okay.
So 4, need for excessive admiration. 5, sense of entitlement. 6, interpersonally exploitative behavior. So you take advantage of others to achieve your own ends. 7, lack of empathy. That's the one I've always heard. Lack of empathy, unable to identify with the feelings of
Certainly
others.
fits with all the rest, right?
It seems that way, doesn't it? 8 is envy. It's like frequently envious of others or believes others are envious of them. And 9, arrogance. Shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. So anyway, you got to have 5 of these according to the DSM to be diagnosed with NPD. What do you think of all that?
It just makes me think of, and we can get to this, but it makes me think of people I've interacted with that certainly show maybe 1 or 2 of those, you know, which back to that notion of folks using the term, you know, because arrogance is on the list.
Yeah, for sure.
At some point, I don't know if, other than you and Jack, I've not interacted with folks that never show some degree of arrogance. I'm teasing.
Okay. This is a coming out podcast
Right.
episode. Yeah.
But for that, the arrogance, entitlement, these things exist. These character flaws, I think, are prevalent across culture. But having five of them all together, and certainly with any kind of prevalence in the person's life or consistency, it seems from that list that that would be something you could put your finger on and really say, like, man, you got 5, 6, maybe 7 of these, dude. I think you got some MPD going on, So, but yeah, again, I wonder, with that definition and those symptoms essentially of NPD, where there may be a line between actually being a narcissist and behaving like a narcissist.
That's a good distinction. I think that you make, because someone could exhibit narcissistic tendencies and yet not be a full-blown NPD, just because of the culture we live in. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
Very entitled culture, very arrogant culture, very cocksure culture, kind of like the sheriff, that people are drawing attention to.
Right. But it does seem, you mentioned the sheriff, and I'm not as familiar with the sheriff as you are. It seems that I'll put it this way, if there is an instance of someone being rightly diagnosed or rightly diagnosable as having narcissistic personality disorder, it seems to me that it is, in those instances, really clear.
Yeah.
And maybe that's me, how I've wrestled with this question, and thinking about certain folks that I think may very well be narcissistic. In those instances, it seems obvious to me. Whereas other people, it's like, they might just, be abrasive. They might just like be in a season of life where they're, feeling extra special or something,
Oh, amen. We all get in diva mode from time to time.
Right.
Yeah, I guess kind of jumping the shark, shifting gears, because I'm not like super aware of every detail of the sheriff's life. It just seems like a common refrain I've seen in the news. The longer this case goes on, is everybody seems angry at the sheriff, and he's a narcissist. I have observed, however, like, it seems in culture that narcissism and leadership do tend to go together when it comes to picturing like the ideal leader of an organization or a business or a company. You talk about
seems to make
Steve
sense.
Jobs, or whatever, but maybe the president, I don't know, but
We'll get there, right?
yeah.
Maybe the president. I don't know.
We don't carry the water for anybody but Jesus
Amen,
on the
dude.
show. So
Yeah, and he done. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you ask a question?
Did I just ruin your train of thought?
No.
Well, just in your mind, in my mind, I think leadership is fraught with narcissism and tends to attract narcissists. Would you agree or disagree with that assessment? That's just my perception.
100% agree. It seems, even reading through that list of the 9 kind of indicators that narcissistic personality disorder may be present here in this individual, all of those things, it seems somebody with maybe even 3 of those things is going to think, well, of course I'm going to lead.
Yeah.
Right? I'm special. I'm going to help all these schleps out, right? Nobody understands it all like I do. I'm going to usher everyone else into like the right way, which is the way that is obvious to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Scary to think
so
about.
I think you probably would find a lot of actual narcissists in leadership, and they would be drawn to it. I wouldn't expect to find a lot of narcissists often alone and indifferent to people's perceptions,
or in a
of
soup
them.
kitchen line, just dolloping up, rice and chicken soup or whatever. Yeah.
No. Oh, okay.
More leadership already.
Serving.
Yeah,
I got you.
exactly.
I was thinking like, no, I doubt there's many narcissistic homeless people in need of a bowl of soup. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, ultimately, this show is
A narcissist with no resources.
for sure. Just haven't gotten around to my grandiosity yet. Obviously, this podcast is commenting on culture for the sake of the gospel and helping people far from God. And I've long been convinced, and when I mean long, I mean the last 3 years. But I've been.
It's a long time.
Is it a long time anymore?
Relative to an hour.
Yeah, I think. I believe, man, the reason that a lot of people get drawn perhaps into pockets of like atheism and unbelief is not so much of the person of Jesus Christ, but literally reactions to toxic church
Mm,
leadership culture
mm.
and maybe a bad experience. Maybe they saw how the sausages were really made behind the scenes and they got grossed out. You walk through a hot dog factory, you're probably not going to eat hot dogs anymore. But it seems to me like a lot of people aren't reacting so much against the person of Jesus and all he was, but and is, but more so the church and narcissism in the church. Would you agree?
I think so. I think so. That makes sense to me. I've not read any studies or seen any statistics on such a thing, but so I think that seems intuitively accurate,
Mhm.
especially
Yeah.
maybe especially in the church. Other instances of leadership, but maybe especially in the church when folks come to a church or get involved in the church, they're wanting
Mm.
a certain experience, and I think for some, the narcissism is going to be readily apparent and a huge turnoff. And this is something that we'll certainly get into. But for others, this is actually exactly what I want, but they wouldn't term it narcissism.
Exactly. Confidence, right? Visionary.
Mhm.
I like the way you worded that though. To them, it's not a bug, it's a feature,
Right.
right? Like they come to church and there's a really self-confident visionary who's combative towards all his enemies, i.e., other churches, i.e., the lost, quote
Hmm.
unquote,
Hmm.
the reprobates out there or
Hmm. Hmm.
whatever. I read a book a couple years ago called "When Narcissism Comes to Church," and it's written by a Western seminary professor named Chuck DeGroat. It's a good book. He leans a little bit woke at times, which is kind of like I don't care for a whole lot when you're shoving down every illustrations of a female pastor or something like that.
Okay.
But I appreciated the book overall because he pointed out how Western Christianity tends to exalt narcissistic leaders. And the book, I read it twice. It scares you though, because he talks about how he himself was a pastor. He served in a narcissistic system, how the success model of what that looks like is often so indicative of what you find in a lot of churches.
Mm.
And he talks about how like even when leaders are sought for and recruited from the church, they don't opt out narcissists. They actively look for them. They don't know that's what they're looking
Right.
for.
Under different
Yeah,
terms.
they're selecting into that.
Hmm.
What do you?
Yeah. Confident, powerful. Yeah. Just, um, yeah, maybe, overemphasizing degrees of competency, that cocksure attitude, the like, I don't even need to question this. We're going, get on board, and we'll get there and it's going to be the best. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's attractive to a lot of folks.
absolutely. Why do you think it is attractive to folks? If you had to guess, like, if you had to psychoanalyze somebody who's like and Chuck DeCroat calls them flying monkeys.
Hmm.
When you're part of a church and there's the wizard up there and you're a flying monkey and you're going to attack anybody that attacks your church or even speaks anything remotely negative about your leader,
Hmm.
whoever that leader may be.
Hmm.
What do you think it is in that person that's drawn to the system like that? That's so toxic.
One word quickly comes to mind. That's simply weakness. And I don't mean that necessarily negatively.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us that we are weak, right? That the Lord is, God is strong, and He is strong on our behalf. I think recognizing our own weaknesses is a part of what may drive a lot of folks to church in the first place. That sense of weakness, that sense of inability to accomplish the thing you want to accomplish or to uh, cultivate or possess the assurance that you want. And then suddenly this guy or this gal is up there and they've got that confidence, that assurance for you, and
Mm,
maybe in other words, convince you, as
mm.
long as you're on this team, as long as you're on my team, as long as you agree with me,
Yes.
everything that
Yes.
I possess, this confidence, this assurance, can be yours,
Mm,
right?
mm,
I've got all the confidence you need. So follow me, listen to what I say, do what I do,
mm,
and you've got no reason to feel so weak or to be in doubt or to fear.
mm,
I'll lead the charge,
mm.
and I think being genuinely weak as a human being, just human weakness, sometimes wants to find all of that stuff in a corporeal human that's going to get up in the pulpit and tell me, as long as you agree with me, you're good.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And you actually, from what I've observed and from what I've read through DeGroat and others who speak of narcissism, that's exactly the phenomenon that they postulate. These are the reasons why people become flying monkeys. Like they're looking for somebody who seems to be on the surface very certain.
That's a good distinction to make, but go ahead. Yeah, seems to be.
Because we both know they're overcompensating for their own insecurities by being so dogmatic about their doctrinal statement or whatever. Because is there any coincidence that a lot of times when you find a narcissistic system that wants to fight everybody, doctrinal, precision, i.e. dogmatism, i.e. combativeness, seems to go hand in hand with such places. Would you agree? Like no
agree.
wiggle room, no gray.
I do agree. Oh yeah, if there's gray, if there is nuance that challenges the dogma, all of a sudden that confidence and that assurance, if not lessened effectively, yet has question marks around it that are uncomfortable. I've shared with you in the past, a leader in a church. One time I was up in Tallahassee at school and came back down to Central Florida and just asked some questions related to continuationism, the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and was told that's a stupid question. Fortunately,
by someone that was actually a pastor or ministry
leader? Yes.
Gotcha.
Fortunately, I had read enough and had heard both sides kind of newly at that time, and I knew this isn't a stupid question. As soon as I got that response, I realized there's nothing stupid about the question. There's nothing wrong with the question. There's something in you that feels uncomfortable that I asked. And in that instance, it became clear to me that there was simply a level of ignorance that would not have been exposed had I not asked the question. And it visibly troubled the person that I asked. Right? So that's what I mean. So I think that's why the insistence on this is the dogma, right? All the way down to all the jots and tittles. These are the things that are settled. Don't even ask about it. And it's under the pretense of don't ask about it because this is settled truth.
Yeah.
What's really going on is don't ask about it because I haven't read the books you've read and it scares me. Yeah. Right?
Dude, can I just shift gears?
Bring it.
Just because you and I, we serve at Grace Life together, at Grace Life, we always try to, in our leadership meetings, we try to shift gears from the intellectual assessment to the personal, subjective, internal alignment of what's happening. Can I ask a person, when that leader said, how old were you when that leader said, that's a stupid question?
I was 20 or 21.
And you had been saved how many years? How many?
Since I was 15, so 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Would you say you were relatively early in your Christian life?
Yeah, there was still a lot of immaturity, and ignorance, and that was a part of what I was doing. I was up in Tallahassee at a church that was Reformed and continuationist as far as the gifts of the Spirit are concerned, and so read Martin Lloyd-Jones' Baptism and Gifts of the Spirit, which I did not know existed.
That's a good one.
I'm pretty sure Lifeway put the kibosh on publishing that book. Like, you can't find it.
They outlawed it. They burned it. The Hitler book burning.
Yeah. I think, go ahead.
But to get back to it, because I want to narrow in on this, how did you feel walking out of that meeting as a 21-year-old young man that's appealing to somebody who's, we joke about you go to seminary and get an MDiv, you're a master in divine things. This master of divine things has seemingly not only answered your question or tried to answer it, they've undermined your dignity by saying it's a dumb question. Even how did that hit you as a young person?
Right.
Because I'm curious. I think our listeners might be able to relate to that.
That's good. That's a great question. There's a reason why that experience stands out. I remember where I was standing, what direction I was aiming.
Went into the nervous system, got lodged in there.
Oh, dude, it got etched in there, man. So it hurt. Being honest, it hurt. It made me sad that somebody that I trust and respect would have such a unkind and like cavalier response in that unkindness. But again, to kind of reiterate and reapply what I was saying about my own level of confidence. I had a genuine question,
Yeah.
but I was convinced it's not a stupid question. I knew that immediately.
At 21, you knew that.
So, right.
That's
So
remarkable.
I knew it
Yeah.
wasn't a stupid question.
Yeah.
It's a question that's been asked since the apostolic age, right? Repeatedly. There's a reason why the debate still goes on. But I felt hurt. I was disappointed, but also almost immediately aware this is revelatory of something going on in this other person, which then just brought in all kinds of like doubts about other, perspectives shared from this person on other things, So it just made me kind of question that person more, uncertain,
That's a
about
good
ways in
one,
which
yeah.
convictions were established. And does that answer your question?
It
I might have
does.
gotten
I
far
suspected
afield.
that was going to be the answer. And it's understandable.
Mhm.
I think it was Gandhi that said something like, the minute you spot a major inconsistency in a leader, everything else they do becomes suspicious. I think he said something like that. It sounds like that's what you went through.
Yeah.
And I would be willing to venture that not everybody who became de-churched or who left the actual organized church did so because of reading the Gospels and coming to a conclusion that Jesus Christ was a liar, a lunatic, right? I believe, just like your interaction was, they maybe asked a question, maybe they were in a class, maybe they heard something expressed from the pulpit, and maybe it bothered them because it didn't seem to align with their experience of reality. And when they asked a clarifying question, I'm going to use a philosophy, they were shamed. You were shamed is what happened there. I think the person answering you felt ashamed that they didn't have a good answer, and therefore they transferred their shame onto your brain, your younger brain, and bullied you or attempted to. And I think you are an anomaly, that you were strong enough in your faith not to just cast the whole thing overboard. Whereas I think a lot of people just don't have that much resiliency and or desire to stick with the Christian faith. And the minute that they're shamed or bullied, they let go of the rope, they spit the bit. And that's it for them.
Yeah, I think something that helped me is that I quickly realized this was an issue with this person in this instance. To be fair, I didn't conclude like, well, that was your response to that question. You're a horrible person. We're done. I'm never trusting anything else you say. That wasn't the case.
That's out there though, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely, it's out
Cancel
there.
culture.
And I also had been in the church long enough that I didn't extrapolate. I didn't broadly apply that experience and make a conclusion of the whole. It was very interpersonal.
Yeah.
And there have been other instances where I've had interactions or maybe some questions and responses that do create more of a challenge for the whole than that instance. But that one on this subject of narcissism, I'm not a licensed psychologist. I wouldn't say authoritatively like this person has narcissistic personality disorder. I would confidently state that is a narcissistic behavior.
100%.
You know,
100%. Yeah, I think, and I like the way you put that, because like I would readily confess, like I have narcissistic tendencies. And I think everybody does, because I think it's a spectrum that you can kind of slide from like minor tendencies that you pick up through culture, nature, nurture, the fact that we're all sinners, versus like full blown NPD, like we talked about at the beginning of our episode. But I'm trying like heck through the power of the Holy Spirit and through my Christian community and people like yourself who constantly check in with each other. How am I leading you? How am I being perceived? What's it like being on the other side of me? So I can try to grow more into Christ likeness instead of just like you're off, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. So I just want to confess that and share, like, I'm not on this podcast like we're going to get all the narcissists out there and point our finger at them, because
well, that's encouraging, because that's not the way a narcissist would typically think. Right. Some people that I have a greater confidence that they could be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. I genuinely cannot imagine that person ever saying, you know what, I've got some narcissistic tendencies. That doesn't seem compatible with being a narcissist, actually, right? to me. But I want us to come back to what you were kind of alluding to as far as helps or even cure for narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic tendencies. I want to come back to that, but I did come across an interview with a doctor in psychology, noting that I guess in the DSM-6, whenever it's supposed to come out, narcissistic personality disorder may not be in there, and Jackie may not be able to find it. But I'm curious if you could find an authoritative word on that.
If it's being
Whether
moved.
right,
It's been
if
moved, I'm sure, into a subcategory because
you think okay.
I'm certain of it because
Okay.
like they've talked about moving other categories.
Okay. I was thinking they were going to get rid of narcissistic personality disorder from the DSM, from the Diagnostic
Really?
Statistical Manual. Yeah.
Entirely?
Yes.
Do you know the reason why?
I don't.
We'll see if Jack can
I'm-
find
I'm-
it.
Right. I'm
Well,
curious
yeah.
about that.
While he's doing that, let's touch back on some other things because this opens up a Pandora's box. This is much bigger than one episode, but we'll try to hit the highlights. Keeping it related to church, since you and I are pastors and we have a heart to see people find their way back to Christ, which right, wrong, indifferent, good or bad, the church is involved in that because the church is God's, body, Christ's body on earth. When we think of de-churched people who are de-churched and who maybe are skeptical because of the establishment and the leaders that they were exposed to, what do you think are some of the traits or situations that would cause that person, if they came back to a church or they gave Christianity another chance, what would cause them to perhaps choose poorly again as far as why they would maybe choose another narcissistic church? Because the reason I ask that is because in Chuck DeGroat's book, When Narcissism Comes to Church, I think it's like chapter 3 or 4, he talks about when they fire the narcissistic pastor, how you can't just sing ding dong, the witch is dead, the wicked witch, they're no longer here. But like the very culture, the very people in the church are formed in such a way, they think in such a way where they're apt to go and usually do go out and hire another narcissist and replace the old one with a worse version of the original. But what do you think it is about that? Like even people that leave the church and maybe now they're headlong into activism, or maybe they're headlong into like John Piper's son Barnabas. I'm just going to bash the church and have like a TikTok channel. This is all I do is like tear down the church. What do you think it is about that? That's like in the human spirit. So like we're shifting gears from like the narcissists out there to the narcissistic systems in here, tendencies in here.
Sure. Yeah. And the tendency to be a flying monkey.
Yeah, flying monkey.
I think as far as getting one and replacing the old narcissist with a new one that may be even worse, has to be in part because of an inability or an unwillingness to identify as narcissistic the first narcissist.
100%.
And so in the selection and calling process to find, in the example that you're asking about, another pastor, the lack of identifying the first as narcissistic, while you still have the same inclination to find somebody to have the confidence and the assurance that you lack, so that you can kind of piggyback on their confidence, I think is key to that. It seems to me, that seems intuitive. I haven't read Chuck DeGroat. You and I have talked about it a good bit.
Yeah.
But I've got to imagine that that's a big part of it. And then folks, for whatever reason, maybe lacking that sense of being on the right team with that top guy.
Yeah.
Maybe they realize like, oh, here's another chance to be back on the right team. So does that make sense?
Dude, what you just said is what I believe 100%. Another chance to be on the right team. Because I've observed either people, let's say someone was exposed to a narcissistic system through a church, toxic church culture. I have seen time and time again that person leave and not choose a healthy alternative. If they stay in the faith, they end up falling into another narcissistic system, and or they have like a blindness and an inability to see that they're falling for another zeitgeist leader, another narcissistic system, and or if they chuck the church as a whole, like now they're like off into like wokeism and like like excessive liberalism, just attacking everything and critiquing everything, and it's like the same like dysregulated nervous system.
Leaving the church to find a whole, I missed that. I got you.
A whole new
leaving
ideology
the church to
of
find
the
a
right
different
team.
ideology with a narcissist. Right.
Yeah.
but you agree that there's a thread running through all of that. No
Absolutely.
matter where the narcissism shows up, there are things that you want, whether it's in the church
Yes.
or in the anti-church. Gotcha.
100%, dude.
Right.
Yeah, it seems to me like that dysregulated nervous system, like you're in a narcissistic system. Everybody's flying monkeys. And like the book, it came out 20 years ago by Vanderblom, the guy that wrote about toxic church cultures. And he's like 7 traits of a toxic church, like can't ask questions. It's got a can't talk rule. Can't talk about it. You're like, hey, I have a question. Can't talk about that. That leader seems like maybe he's cheating on us. Can't talk about that. Like, it seems like that dysregulation of your nervous system that's prevalent there just gets transferred to some new ideology, some new cause, and I'm on the right side again. It's just the church stinks, but these people get it. So,
and again, to acknowledge, you and I both have acknowledged in a couple of the topics we've discussed, right? I am not a doctor and couldn't officially diagnose anybody with any of these things. That, however, seems extremely intuitive.
well, you're a physician of the soul. I mean, you may not have like secular credentials, but ultimately, I think church history tells us that we are the true physicians.
For sure.
So,
Jack, did you find something?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's entirely like conclusive. It seems like it's still in the works.
Okay.
But changing the criteria, so instead of like
Gotcha.
5 of 9,
Okay.
it's like 2 of 4, and also grandiosity and detention seeking.
Okay.
Not final yet
Gotcha.
because it's not out, but it seems
Gotcha.
like it will be further clarified.
Okay.
But still going to be in there,
That's helpful. Thank you.
probably.
I suspect a part of the reason why that's the case, and maybe uniquely with narcissistic personality disorder, there is the desire to kind of tweak it or even talks of removing it because of the subjectivity involved in diagnosing it.
oh, I was curious. Yeah, what would be the reason? Is it like so widespread now and like blown that there's like
Maybe.
just take it out?
Right, maybe.
But yeah.
Yeah, when one of the 9 symptoms is arrogance, it seems like, okay, some of these things are just a little too prevalent.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to be
across the
humble when you're
board.
right, Stephen.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
We're all married here. Yeah, I guess I'm always thinking of, and I know you're the same way. I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone that's been a member of the church, or maybe they've seen unhealthy examples of leadership and culture, and they look in the church and they see those same unhealthy examples. And I think it's always good to do some self-reflection of like, what did I bring to the table that contributed to this? Because I agree, the cocksure, arrogant, right attitude coming from the pulpit, whatever it is, like there's a insecurity in the listener that's drawn to that, because when it comes down to it, Stockholm syndrome is all too prevalent in all of us. Like, I was telling somebody last week, we were at a conference together. Remember, Stephen, we were with a couple of buddies, pastors, and we talked about how because people are fallen sinners, if you give them a choice of where to go to church, even with the Holy Spirit, they'll choose poorly because they have such nascent like flaws like in their soul, like this like insecurity that like makes them drawn to unhealthy establishments, unhealthy systems. So
Certainly seems that way.
yeah, it does.
But to the question of, and you've kind of alluded to some of these things, I think we've, just kind of establishing what narcissistic personality disorder is according to the DSM-5, right, as a diagnosable disorder, and then narcissistic traits, all of that. I think that raises the question, well, if somebody were to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder or to become aware of, like you confess, and I'll freely confess as well, certainly some behaviors that are narcissistic.
Yeah, they'd be on the chart. Yeah.
Well, how do you overcome that, heal from that, recover? How do you change those behaviors? And maybe the scariest thing is that it does seem a more holistic diagnosis, right? Like you're not just a narcissist on Saturday. You're not just a narcissist when there's a microphone in your face, right?
Yeah, sure.
You're a narcissist in traffic. You're a narcissist at the dinner table.
That's good.
So how do you overcome that? How do you turn from that, heal maybe? Any
Are you
thoughts?
asking my point of view, or are you just teasing the question?
I've got both.
I'll go first. Yeah, since we did what 10 sermons on narcissism. Was it last year or the year before? I think it was 2 years ago, right?
What year is it?
It's 2026.
Year and a half.
Year and a half ago,
that's right.
yeah. From everything that I've read and studied, a narcissist is a narcissist because they have a wound. And I say that so that we have compassion towards the narcissist in our life, whether it's our mother, whether it's someone that's in leadership, politics, or whatever. They have a wound, and that's what causes them for the overcompensation of projecting this like bulletproof, like, shell. Nobody can hurt me, I don't get my feelings hurt. Well, baloney, that's not normal. Um, so because narcissists have a wound, from what I've read, community, being immersed in community, and I want to be very clear because I'm a pastor and I wholeheartedly believe this. Even if I was not a pastor, Christian gospel-centered community where the fruit of the Holy Spirit is on display, where a narcissist can join in and see healthy relationships, healthy conflict resolution, healthy behaviors, gratitude, where these things can be modeled, and thereby the narcissists actually have like their thinking rewired, where it's okay to be vulnerable here. We don't have all the answers, and it's okay to say, I haven't read as much as you have on eschatology. Like if you came in reading Martin Lloyd-Jones, who is very convincing on a lot of things that he writes, to say, I haven't read that. I think a lot of, again, pastors are afraid of losing control or being seen as a doofus or something. Like, I haven't read everything, that I ought to have read in their mind or something. So like this insecurity, this wound of like not wanting to be seen as vulnerable or inadequate, like drives that. So I would say that for me, community, is the way to heal. I don't think it's going to be reading a book. And I think the same thing is true for flying monkeys, people that are drawn to narcissists. Like, goodness gracious, like before you tell people on Facebook, like what's the next best church to go to because you finally figured out your church was a dumpster fire, like you probably need to go to therapy for a year and a half and figure out what drove you to be part of that. Because I'm sure your default recommendation is going to be crappy, as far as, does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. And it makes sense. I remember that sermon series and conversations that we've had about the value and power of healthy gospel community.
Yes.
And I think related to a narcissist's past and likely totally, if not near totally suppressed trauma, not being metabolized and worked out. And so you put up this facade of assurance and confidence, and you can't hurt me, and I deserve the best. One time I got punched in the mouth by the person that was supposed to love me most. And the way I'm going to deal with that is prove to the rest of the world I deserve all the best, and don't mess with me, and that kind of a thing. In healthy gospel community, ideally, there's going to be someone that has genuine, deep confidence that doesn't come across arrogant, but humble, and that says, brother, you sound like you're trying to protect yourself, and you don't have to. You don't have to, because God loves you. You're forgiven in Christ. You're a part of the family of God. You've been adopted. You're loved. You don't have to parade around by yourself like you are God.
Dude, that's so good. I think, and
you don't
this
have
is
to control everything.
You don't. And not only that, like the church is the one organization in the world that in order to join, you have to confess how jacked up your life is and that you don't have it all together. And it's just funny to me how like that so often is not what's portrayed from the church as a whole. Like we have all the answers. We're bulletproof. There's no sinners in here.
Right.
Oh, there's a sinner in here that I just found out about. Like I'm upset there's a sinner in here. It's like, well, what do you expect?
Right.
Well, I think you're in the wrong building. You reported to the wrong place this Sunday morning. Like maybe you need to be at a political rally if you think you're supposed to be part of people who have it all figured out, Stephen. Like it drives me up the freaking wall. Like it's so often the case. Like we're the right, well, we got the right doctrine, we got this, we got that. Like where is a church is a community built upon shared weakness.
Yeah, dude, amen.
And like if that's not being modeled from the pulpit, if that's not being modeled and people aren't being formed into that, then what the hell are you part of?
That's good.
That's good. It's
man.
My question.
That's really good. It is. No. I appreciate it. No. I appreciate it. I think it just brings back to mind other questions I've asked as far as things that are problematic, like what is the cure? What is the hope? And certainly gospel and the hope of glory. That one day there aren't going to be these disorders and personality issues, all that stuff, interpersonal difficulties, that's all going to be done away with. But in thinking through cure or helps at least ways to maybe lessen the prevalence of narcissistic behaviors in yourself. We were talking about this a little bit ago. I do think, again, Jung is helpful. I think.
Carl Jung?
Yeah, I think
Dude.
that he's
Share
that
some, because
he's
you're a
helpful.
Jungite for sure.
Well, I'm trying to be newly reignited interest in him, but the idea that there is this aspect of yourself that he referred to as the shadow, where, from what I understand, there is a shadow self that is largely conditioned into us, but also kind of innate in humanity. I would say, certain aspects of our sin nature that we hide, our shadow. But also that's where some trauma lives, and maybe anger, fear, like I've tried to examine my own shadow, and I mean, there's a perverted murderer in there, right? These anybody listening to the podcast, don't take that too far, but just the deep-seated anger about certain things that I don't often show. And that's one of the tricky things. Every now and then, if you don't try to healthily integrate your shadow into your self that's evident to you and to others, it will come out in the most unhealthy ways. Whereas if you do work to integrate it in a healthy way, you can be aware and kind of process and even love that shadow self. And that's what Jung said is individuation, right? And that process is individuation, becoming a fully integrated individual. But what this has to do with narcissism, he wrote about the magician archetype and the dark magician archetype, which goes back to one of the symptoms of narcissism that is related to control and trying to control environments. A way that a narcissist will do this as the dark magician is maybe the scariest. You mentioned certain things about narcissists that it's kind of scary, right? To think like, I see a little bit of that in me.
Yeah, dude.
The magician will essentially like not convince his or herself that he or she is a narcissist, but is aware of narcissism. And this is to egoism, which we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Try to manipulate his or her surroundings and relationships to try to convince everybody, I'm not a narcissist. But this ironic thing is happening when you're spending so much time trying to make sure nobody perceives you as a narcissist.
That's so good.
You're still self-absorbed, but it's aware that narcissism isn't good.
Yeah.
So I can't ever seem like that. And so you start to do this magic trick.
Yeah.
For the narcissist, it's a magic trick, right? Where you essentially create your reality.
Yeah.
Right? That affirms you're actually humble. Dude. You're actually really kind. And it's like, dude, you are actually self-absorbed.
Dude.
Your kindness is a performance. Does that make sense?
It's funny, and I'm amening, because that's what Chuck DeGroat calls faux vulnerability. And it's funny you mention that. Like and here's the thing. When you do that, I think the people that you work with and you serve with know. Because I think they know what you're up to.
Or maybe suspect.
Yeah. Right. Like there was a pastor, we're not here to name names, but like 2 years ago, this guy was like, he wrote so many books on like gospel culture. It's not like the main gospel culture guy, Ray Ortland. We love him. Yeah. It's another guy. He's like a secondary guy, but he would write a lot about humility and stuff. He got outed from his own church, fired, because they said, "You're writing all these books. You don't lead this way in our church." Oh. And they actually got sick of it, and they actually fired him. He got fired for vulnerability. Wow. Having faux vulnerability, where you're the orchestra conductor trying to make sure that you don't appear a certain way, and you're talking about these virtues that you yourself don't have. So it's just funny you mentioned that. Is that the magician then? Is that the magician? The
magician, and that's something that a narcissist will do. I mean, anybody can, right? Anybody can fake vulnerability, fake whatever it is. And that's super tricky. And I mean, that's a scary thing. I think with humility comes at times some concern that, like, am I actually kind, or am I a jerk that knows it's better to be kind? And so I put I put on the kind face.
Write in your notes to cry here at the sermon.
Right.
Tell a sad story of dog.
That's actually in all of my notes. But that's just a narcissistic behavior, not narcissism.
Good distinction.
I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
All mine are narcissistic
kidding.
behaviors. I'm actually full-blown NPD.
Right. Of course not. But yeah, I think that's some of the trickiness, and at times maybe the scary thing, and worth some sober examination. But again, back to having a healthy community where people can say, dude, yeah, this behavior is evident, but I don't think that this characterizes you, right? At times we all are going to put on the face that isn't sincere and isn't fully integrated with our shadow, right? But I'll lose my train of thought a little bit there, but I think healthy community is community in which somebody could say, dude, yeah, this is beyond the pale. This is a little out of line. You see what I'm saying? Right? Because oftentimes we don't see that.
That's so good. Steve, we only have a few minutes left, but I want to land the plane here with some practical application for our listeners. And
Yeah, I had a practical question too, but you go ahead.
did you have one too?
No, go ahead.
Well,
We
my
might have
thought
the
was
same one.
this, ending with two questions, because we've touched upon a lot of stuff in the episode. But again, putting myself in the shoes of the listener. Let's say someone either is de-churched and they're skeptical of Christianity because of bad examples in leadership that they've seen. What are some suggestions, or what's some advice on how to move forward for them? And then second of all, if someone is curious whether or not they're in a narcissistic system or a narcissistic church, what would be some attributes to look for in the system itself? So you answer one of those, I'll answer the other. I'll let you go first.
I'll start
People
with
in the church or people outside the church? Which one you want to do? You can pick one. I'll answer the other one. At least from my point of view, my vantage point.
I'll say outside the church. My encouragement for folks outside of the church, and maybe with the either reason or excuse, on that continuum, maybe folks outside of the church. My encouragement would just be to how you can try to get to know Jesus Christ as Jesus Christ presented himself. So reading through the Gospels, reading the New Testament.
That's good.
If you've left church for whatever wound, I would just say try to draw near to the person of Jesus Christ, which is possible. A part of the difficulty is Jesus Christ has given the world, the church, what he refers to authoritatively as his body. So I would encourage folks, try to get to know Jesus Christ. Try to find a church that would patiently, lovingly, humbly help you to get to know Jesus Christ. And don't convince yourself, and maybe reject the notion that might be deep-seated now that every church is narcissistic, that every pastor is a narcissist, and that's why they got into that gig,
Exactly.
You hear accusations like that.
For sure. That's sound advice. I like it. I agree wholeheartedly. The only thing I would add is maybe even be open to other faith expressions of Christianity. So like, for example, like if you were burned in a Baptist church, and maybe try an Anglican church or something like that. Maybe even a Presbyterian church, and EV Free Church, maybe Foursquare, Wesleyan. I mean, there's going to be, obviously we believe at Grace Life certain things doctrinally, but when it comes down to it, we all hold Christ in common. And maybe find, if it's so triggering to be in an environment because you associate your new Baptist church with your childhood Baptist church or whatever, or Presbyterian church.
That's good.
So
yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah. Since you tackled that one, I'll tackle people that are in the church, and maybe people that are thinking or starting to slowly discover they're in a narcissistic system. Some red flags are an inability in leadership to ever admit they're wrong, a lack of confession and humility, a micromanaging maniacal control on what every last person believes. There's a right way to do a load of laundry. There's a right way to be a member of this church. Overly verbose and meticulous new member covenants where you have to toe the line in every area. A culture of secrecy where there's a can't talk rule,
right?
Can't disagree rule with leadership. And That's a big one for me. I mean, it's been that way since we started Grace Life. That's why we don't have any flying monkeys at Grace Life. We don't. Like, people I think are very comfortable saying when things are wrong and what is
They're
wrong.
comfortable busting our chops.
They
that's
are
right.
constantly
Yeah.
busting our balls. So, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing entirely, you know. But those kind of things, and I would say if they're thinking that they're in a toxic culture, I would say if you come to that understanding, I think you have to get out and you have to leave. And I would not make a decision quickly of where you need to go next, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to choose poorly until you heal whatever that insecurity and wound that drove you there initially. It's going to drive you to the next zeitgeist, which unfortunately, like, you know, we follow Big Eva. We know the big names out there. There's so many pastors that are well known. I can't listen to them preach anymore. I can't listen to their podcasts anymore, because every sermon somehow they find a way to work in the fact of how many people they're baptized and how big their church has been in the last year. And I'm like, just exegete the text, man. Just care for your people. I don't need to have like a 15-minute update about how many campuses you added last week.
Right.
Like, you need to let the press stop going to your head, bro. But anyway, that would be some counsel for
good.
folks that maybe think they're in a toxic system.
That's good.
So
Real quick, for maybe just the fun of it, 1 minute.
do it.
Any instances of narcissism in pop or mass, pop culture
Like, are we talking about like,
that we all would maybe be familiar with? Any?
you want me to say it, don't you? You want me to call the code red, don't you?
I mean, I can volunteer too.
We know.
I know that
we know the Trumpster, man.
Yeah,
Come on,
we've
dude.
we've discussed this. Yeah, so I just launched that question in there, wanting to get it out there, because I do think it's valuable
I agree.
to be able to say, I think this is what it looks like when you are presented with a person that
Sure.
likely has an actual disorder, and not commenting on his policies or anything
100%.
other than what seems to be apparent in his person. I do think Donald Trump is a narcissist. To say some of the things that he has said, and to verbally violently strike down people that would
Yes.
challenge him, dude,
I
calling a
agree.
reporter piggy, often calling people stupid for asking
Glad they're dead.
fantastic questions, trying to hold him accountable,
Yeah.
right? Trying to hold him accountable to anything.
Yeah.
If you're not on his team, you're about to catch hell for simply asking the question. And speaking of behaviors, just real quick, because I think this might be a little fun. The mic right here is something for me, proof that I've overcome some narcissistic tendencies. I was at dinner with my wife, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law. They'll remember this. And slowly, everything on my side of the table ended up on the other side of the table. I subconsciously realized, dude, I'm talking, other than my plate and my drink and my silverware, everything was on the other half of the table. I had sat there not realizing what I was doing, just slowly kind of shoving everything away from my space. No joke. Another brother-in-law sent me a video, aware of this behavior in me, sent me a video of Donald Trump walking into like every meeting, and he'd sit down, anything in his space, that shit out of here.
It's like
Right?
Jim
Just
Halpert.
pushing
Dwight,
the
he's
stuff.
got the ruler. Remember
Right,
that one
pushing
episode?
the
He's
stuff
pushing his
away.
stuff back.
Right, yeah.
I thought that.
I've had to pay attention to that, and my wife has helped me to see when I do that, and I might still do it every now and then. I do?
Yeah.
That's right, I have. Dude, it used to be bad. I used to do it
Yeah.
far more often. It's like, man, this stuff's in my space.
Sure.
What was his, the comedian, man, goodness, he said, he's like, oh yeah, I'll tithe. He's like, I'll throw all my money up in the air, and whatever doesn't fall back down, God can keep. What was his name? And he talked about like everybody's in this big club and you're not in it, talking about politics. George Carlin.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. George Carlin. He had a funny bit that was, are we allowed to cuss on this podcast? We can bleep it, maybe. Maybe we'll bleep it out. I'm quoting the man. Maybe that'll be
If it's
another
a quote, I
episode.
think
Maybe
it's
that'll be
acceptable.
another episode. I would love to talk about language.
Scubalon. Use
Yeah,
the Greek word
yeah.
of the cuss word, like Paul.
what he said,
Philippians
he
chapter 3.
just had a whole bit on how typically people think like this is the idea. Move your shit so I can put down my stuff.
I have heard him say that, dude. Yeah.
Right? It's
In the
always
BC
someone
days, to
else's
be clear.
shit and it's my stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think that's
So
good.
I think the narcissist thinks about that in every aspect
In
of
every
life.
aspect. No, I'm glad you mentioned it. We don't have time to get on to politics,
Sure,
but I'm glad
yeah,
you
we're
mentioned
at
that
the end.
example because probably it's the elephant in the room. Everybody's wondering
think
about like
so.
what's a go-to that you could
example.
fairly confidently say that's an NPD person.
Right.
And I'll be full disclosure, like I voted red
Right.
because of I'm voting for a lot more than a person, and I'm not voting for a pastor.
Sure.
But at the same time, like I'm not like one of these flying monkeys that are into politics that are
The
like,
man can do no wrong.
He can do no wrong. He's God's anointed.
Yeah.
Like
It's fine to
I think I'd expect a bit
stop
more.
this war when he feels it in his bones. That's fine.
Exactly.
No.
So, but I think it's good because I think a lot of people that are like burned out of church, man, got burned from not only narcissistic systems, but ones where there was like an American flag hanging over the pulpit.
Dude.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yes. Yeah.
every
Jesus
illustration.
is a Republican American for
Of
sure.
course, dude.
Yeah,
Every
clearly.
illustration of faithfulness was Ronald Reagan in some regard, you know.
Yeah.
Trust but verify. But anyway.
Right.
Well, that's all we have for this week. We're out of time. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Peace.
All right. Peace.